Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Leafs Town. And I know it's been a while. The Leaf season ended right in the middle of my exam, so I haven't really had much of a chance to, come in here and talk about it. Ryan's not with me here today, but he'll be around, and we'll definitely make another video when it comes to that point. But we're gonna do something a bit different here for this video, because, like I said, Leaf season ended, and a lot of stuff has happened since then, and it can be a lot to process. So we're going to split it up into parts in this video. You can go to each section and focus on that. It'll be easier than us jumping all over the place. And hopefully that will make it all easier to process. And I hope you enjoy and, let us know what you think about the new format. Well, it happened again. And we ask, what's the excuse? Honestly, the Leafs played really well for that whole Florida series. They were outplaying Florida the whole time. And as per usual, they get goalied. So Bob Bobrovsky's having an absolutely historical run. He didn't even start off as a starting goaltender for the Panthers in the first series against Boston. But here he is, absolutely shutting down the Leafs with some amazing performances. I think there's a stat where he had the two best performances of his whole career, like the best 2 game stretch of his whole career against the Leafs. And man, it doesn't matter really how good your guys are playing if they just can't get past a hot goalie. And that's, I think, one flaw with the sport as a whole, where one person can have such a huge effect on the game, and they're like the only person. There's 2 goalies on the ice, and those 2 goalies are the ones that dictate the whole game. And that's exactly what Bobrovsky did. Samsonov couldn't keep up. Wall couldn't keep up once Samsonov went down with the injury. And everyone's like harping on Matthews and Marner and saying, "Oh, you couldn't score a goal, you couldn't score a goal." But like, if you look at the stats and just watch the game, honestly, you can see how many times Matthews got robbed, hit the post. Luck is a thing in sports, and it just wasn't on the Leaf side in that series. And it was for the Tampa series, so they probably didn't. The Leafs didn't play to the best of their ability in the Tampa series at all. Um, Tampa played them probably 4 or 5 out of those 6 games, and no, yeah, 4 or 5 out of those 6 games, and it still ended up going well for them. They could lean on their talent, and it ended up helping them here. But like sometimes it's just the goalie. And look at Vasilevsky; he did not have a good series, and he was letting in goals that we never thought we'd see him let in. And Bobrovsky was just not like that. Every single like grade A chance, just off his pad, off his glove, is just you couldn't get past him. And that's just how it is. If you run into a hot goalie, they will stop you. Simple as that. It happened with Price with Montreal. It happened, Vasilevsky, I guess, even though he wasn't that great. Yeah, that's probably not the best example, but uh, yeah. So now the Leafs have lost 3 times in a row, and if you don't include the bubble, not the bubble, the COVID season, they that's 4 times in a row. I think, 'cause Boston probably went to the finals in 2019. I think, yeah. So I mean, I guess that's a bit of a consolation. You're losing to the second best team every single season. So you have an argument for third. And that is also just a luck thing where you're playing all the teams that are on hot streaks. And, it's happening to Florida, where they beat Boston, which is the best regular season team. They beat Carolina in a sweep. And the Leafs, they beat in 5 handily. And honestly, the Leafs had a like, even though it was in 5 and they were down 3-0, that was a close series. Like every single game was pretty close, and if little things happened in each of those games, it could have been a Leafs win. And a couple of those posts, maybe an inch to the right, inch to the left, that's a goal. Um, what else? All right, refereeing. So we do have to talk a bit about refereeing here, and yeah, so we do have to talk a bit about refereeing here, and it's it was abysmal to say the least. Uh, like Nice Tavares Marner was an absolutely amazing line. I think it has one of the highest expected goals for the like playoffs, all teams. It's like 80% or something crazy like that. And that line ended up getting split up. Why? Because Bennett rock bottomed Nyes. This isn't just about the Leafs. This is a holistic player safety issue. You can't have players like Sam Bennett who have histories of being dirty players getting away with stuff like that because that is really dangerous. It could have ended someone's career, to be honest. Lucky that, Nyes seems to be doing better now. Didn't make it back into the playoffs, obviously, but still, that's a rookie. That could end his career before it even starts, really. So that's just dangerous. And then obviously the game winning, series winning goal in overtime where Gudis is like obviously holding Yarncroke's stick, cause him to fall over and lose his balance and not get on that shot. It's really like disappointing to lose a series like that because the Leafs probably should have, maybe not should have won that game, but they if you follow the deserve to win meter, they should have won that game. And they got like basically cock blocked by the referees there, and it would have made for a really good series. That's 3-2 at that point. You're going back to Florida, and if the Leafs win that, it's game 7 and anything can happen. And we didn't get that because why? The referees just couldn't do their job properly. And it sucks because you don't want something like that to be hanging over your series win where the goal and the suspension that shouldn't have happened played a big role in it. And yeah, obviously the Leafs couldn't get the goals that they needed at the time that they needed, but they weren't getting any favors from the referees. And Florida has gotten favors from the referees throughout the playoffs. Carolina, the Leafs, Boston all came out on the short end of the stick when it came out against them. And we know that Florida is a dirty team. They just can't keep getting away with it. As simple as that. Now they're going to the finals. I personally have them to win, and sadly, the referees are going to play a big role in that. Just how it is. Something has to change. They have to be they have to crack down on actual dangerous plays and plays that affect the game instead of these little things that really, really don't matter, and they still give random penalties out that do end up affecting the game. So, yeah, that's my little rant on the referees. Obviously, they are not the only reason the Leafs lost, but they are part of it. I don't think there's any uh, denying that. If you do, maybe you can call me biased, but I think it's very biased to say that they didn't play a role in at least that last game. Anyways, as for the performers, man, I think everyone showed up. Like, sure, you can say, "Oh, Matthews and Marner, they weren't there. They didn't score the goals when they need to score the goals." Sure, but no one was scoring because Bobrovsky was just insane. They had their chances, a lot of chances, and had it been pretty much any other goalie in the playoffs right now, barring maybe Aiden Hill, who's been absolutely amazing too, those are going in. The Leafs win the series, but obviously that didn't happen. I think they played amazing. Obviously, Marner and Matthews, they playing on both sides of the ice, did a really good job. Tavares, uh, slowed down a lot in that Florida series, but he was still contributing, and obviously he had that game-winning goal for against Tampa, and that takes a lot of pressure off what you could say to him. Nylander was probably the best of the big four, where he was always moving, getting chances. Some defensive blunders but that comes with the territory. Overall, I think they all did a really good job. One person who is absolutely amazing for the Leafs is Morgan Riley. Um, Him and Luke Shen, that was a surprise. Like, how is that supposed to work? Like, you never expected that. Shen was, if you look at the stats, absolutely horrible this season. But then you suddenly stick him on the line with the Leafs' top defensive, offensive defenseman, and he turns into a top shutdown defenseman to help him. That's what Riley's needed for so long, and he was that. He was that. I forgot which year he was like tied for the most goals by a defenseman in the season, but he was scoring goals in the clutch, and that's what you needed. So he tied a lot of games, won a lot of games for the Leafs. He logged huge minutes, not as much as Justin Hall for some reason, but we'll get to that in a second. And yeah, Riley played absolutely amazing. Um, as for the supporting players, I think Camp a lot of times he was the only guy going, which is not actually a good thing, but for a fourth line center, that's a compliment. O'Reilly was a bit disappointing. He was there in the first round, got a clutch goal to help with the comeback, but after that, he really didn't play a huge role. Achari was absolutely amazing, though. Huge forward checking presence, led the league in hits. So that's something new. Can never call the Leafs soft again, but for some reason they'll just start calling them dirty. But anyways, um, Lafferty, not that great. He was in and out of the lineup. Same thing with Zach Aston Reese. Knives was obviously absolutely amazing in the top six, and even on that line with Riley and Achari. And he has solidified his spot in the top six for next season. Um, and obviously, we're going to get to next season in a bit, but that is a really good sign for the Leafs that a young player can come in and fill in one of the roles that they needed, which is the top six left winger. Now, the defense, McCabe was good. Some dumb penalties, which I wish he didn't take. Jumped up a bit too much, but overall, I think he carried that pairing between Brody and McCabe, because Brody was so bad. I don't know if he was nursing some type of injury, but that is supposed to be our most steady defenseman, and he was just not that. Simple as that. He's jumping up way too much. His decision making was really bad. Like the puck handling was just not there. It was disappointing because you needed him to step up. Obviously, Riley stepped up, but you need your top shutdown defenseman, and that's just not what he did. And obviously, Louis Green came in. I think he was really solid. A couple blunders, which were not his fault. Luck, like I said, is a thing. A bouncing puck is luck, and you just can't control it sometimes. People are gonna like jump on him for that, but really nothing you can do there. Um, he I think really brought Giordano up because he struggled towards the end there. Giordano was in tough, and you know I I'm gonna get to Hall here for a second, but the defensive depth was supposed to be a strength of the Leafs here, and it was a lot of the top guys, like guys that are supposed to be regulars, were not performing. Brody and Giordano are the you know biggest culprits of that. Now, Justin Hall. It took him long enough for it took him long and oh god, it took it long enough for Keefe to take him out of the lineup in the first place. But then he comes back in and he plays him like what? 23, 24 minutes. He led the Leafs in minutes. Justin Hall. I'm sorry, but that's just like subpar decision making to say the least. And I really don't know how to justify Keefe's actions uh in that field. L- Liljegren was much, much, much better. He on that pairing with McCabe, I think, is where he played his best. And Hall just did not work anywhere. And I mean, you can have him in the lineup as a penalty killer because he was good on the penalty kill. I'll give him that. But to play him 24 minutes a night is absolutely insane. Like Riley isn't playing as much, especially when goal scoring was the problem. The logic just isn't there. So yeah, a lot of bad decisions. I don't want to talk about this for too long because everyone already knows what happened. It's a lot of bad decisions on the coaching staff part. Just some unlucky play. Ran into a hot goalie, and a hot goalie can win you a championship. So that's what happened here. It is disappointing that um even though the Leafs played well, they couldn't come out of it with the win, but that's just how it is sometimes. You have to take the consolation that, the Leafs are still a really good team because they lost to Florida, who is somehow exploiting the referees and taking it all the way to the finals. And, not just exploiting the referees, obviously, they're riding a hot goalie. Matthew Kachuk has been absolutely insane. And, his supporting cast has been helping him out too, but that has been a part of it, the referees. Okay, I think that's enough for the Leafs recap. We know what happened. There's no point in talking about it. There is no excuse, really, because still the Leafs were a better built team than uh, Florida. If their finishing was on point, they would have won this series. It just wasn't. Okay, so that's that section. Let's move on to the next one. Now, this is a really complicated situation, and there looks like there's a lot of manipulation, and things just didn't really go well. So, from the beginning, it looked like Shanahan was blocking out what Dubas could do, um, dictating his moves, and with how smart Dubas is, you shouldn't be doing that. Don't get in his way. Let him do his thing. Um, and obviously that made Dubas unhappy. He was confused about whether he actually wanted to come back and be the GM, and he decided he wanted to, and you still let him go. And it looked like Shanahan tried to spin it on Dubas and say that nope, I this was his fault. He was being a bad employee, blah blah blah. And I'm just not cool with it because we lost a very good GM. And if it had not been down to, such like petty reasons as to why you let him go, then maybe, but it just seems so dumb because you lose so much talent at that position, and now who you're going to replace him with is Brad Treliving. That's the number one option. So I don't want to get too much into the politics between Shanahan and Dubas, and it's not my speed. I don't really care. I just care that it happened, and I think it was the wrong decision. You don't let someone that talented go. Um, and now they're looking for a replacement. My personal favorite, as are many's, is Tuloski from the Carolina Hurricanes, but it looks like Shanahan wants Brad Treliving. Yeah. Like, I don't really have any comment on that. That's just stupid. That is sending your franchise in the complete wrong direction. And I don't even want to imagine what he would do to this very talented Leafs core. So, yeah, I really don't have that much to say there. If you're going to bring someone in, just have it be Tluski, have it be Pridham maybe. But just don't get someone like Shirelli or Treliving or anything like that, because that will absolutely hurt me, and I might just disown the Leafs. I probably won't. I'll probably still be around here, and it will be hurting me even more, though. Yeah, that's my little section there because I really don't have that much to say on the politics, and I have nothing to say except I hope to God, even though I don't believe in him or her or whatever the hell. Oh God, I messed this up already. Just please get someone good. Tuloski, Pridham, someone decent. Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna make a very hot take here. You do not move on from the core for Riley. You don't move on from any of the core. And this is gonna be really hot because they haven't really done much, have they? Now here's the deal. They performed well this season. And the fact is they just got unlucky, and you just cannot win a trade with any of these guys. You can't let them walk in free agency either because that's just too much value to let go. you'll never get that kind of value back. So here's the deal. Now that Dubas is gone, it's going to be tough. It is complicates Matthews's re-signing, but you have to get him back. You have to get Marner back, Nylander back, and you don't trade anyone. As simple as that. You don't win a trade. You lose too much value. Your team gets worse overall. How does that help you win a cup? It doesn't. And now this absolute god killer of a player is on another team, and that is going to mess you up in the long run. It's just, it's the Leafs. They will run into you, score 4 goals on you in the playoffs in one game, and you're out. So, yeah, I just don't think you can trade away any of these guys. You will lose in any possible way, and you just need to keep going with them. And it seems like they're willing to stay. You have to probably incentivize them more now because of the fact that Dubas is gone. And that's another reason I think you have to bring in someone really good. Don't bring in Brad Treliving. That will not make them happy. They know hockey and they know that's a bad decision. So yeah, that is my controversial take. A lot of people will disagree with me, say they haven't done enough, which you're right, they haven't done enough. But frankly, you committed to this core, and where are you gonna get the players to replace them? The only like trade which I could possibly see working is Marner because you could actually get a lot of value back for him. And that's not to say you won't get a lot of value back for Matthews. You won't get a lot of value back for Nylander, but it just wouldn't be enough. With Marner, I think he's like got enough of a reputation almost where you would get what you needed. Not what you needed though. It would still not be enough, but it would be better than the other two. But for a fact, you are losing every single one of those trades. Anytime you trade away a player that good, you are losing that trade. We don't want another Matthew Tkachuk situation where we gave up on a younger player that is just entering their prime and they we bring in veterans. The veterans drop off because they're veterans, and then the young player goes and destroys a league and goes and wins a Stanley Cup like Matthew Tkachuk is going to do. We don't want that. So let's not have it. As simple as that. Don't trade them. Build around them like you did this season. There are still a lot of assets. Matthew Nyes is going to be there. Liljegren's only getting better. Robertson has had injury issues, but he is very capable of being an NHL player, especially in the top 6. That fills out your top 6. You just have to fill in a couple bottom 6 players. The defense is, you still have a lot of depth. Riley and Liljegren can hold down that defensive core for a long time. McCabe is still around. You still have Timmins. Niemla's coming up. So many good prospects. And obviously, you go and sign free agents. And to all saying that's going to be really hard with the cap. Not really, actually. Dubas set up this team perfectly. If you give Matthews even $13-14 million, you give Marner another $11 million. That's in 2 years. That's in a while. You give Nylander like $8 million. It all works out, provided you can move on from Matt Murray's contract, which is I want to say like 4.67 or something like that. Around that number, you are completely good. And I don't think it's going to be through a buyout. I think Ryan was mentioning this to me, and this is it. And now it completely makes sense. That Sandin trade where you get a first round pick back. Now you move on for that first round pick and package with in a package with Matt Murray, get back something like future considerations or something, but you're off that contract without having to buy him out. And then you bring back Samsonov, whether it's like $3.5 million for a couple years, run with Joseph Wall and him as your tandem for a couple years. Liljegren is still on a cheap deal. Brody's a UFA in a year. Dubas set up this team pretty much perfectly to bring everyone back, run with this core. All you got to do is move on from Matt Murray. It's really not that hard. You could bring back O'Reilly. You can bring back Achara. You can bring back Kerfoot. You can bring back Camp. You can bring back Lafferty, which he's already on a 2-year deal, but still. You can re-sign Nick Robertson. He's not going to want much, obviously, because he's had a couple tough injury seasons. And then obviously when Tavares' contract comes off, that's a lot cheaper than it was at $11 million. It really works out perfectly. Um, and if you had Dubas to set it up perfectly for you. Hopefully, whichever new GM comes in doesn't mess that up. You run with this core, you run with this team. It's still young in a lot of places, and it is for a lot of them, a lot of these players, Liljegren, Nyes, Robertson, Niemela, Timmins, they're only getting better. You give Liljegren his top pair minutes this season beside Morgan Riley. You give Nyes the top 6 minutes. You give Robertson top 6 minutes. They will thrive. They will help you, and you have bona fide top pair defensemen, top 6 players that you don't need to go look for at the deadline anymore. And now you're just working on filling in holes. You don't need another Ryan O'Reilly. If he wants to come back, he can come back, and you can bring him back for $4.5 million ish. It's not hard, especially for if it's just a year or two. I think you got to stick with this core. A lot of people will say, move on from Nylander. That's crazy. Don't do it. Move on from Marner. Less crazy, but still don't do it. Like, actually, let's do this. Actually, so there is a very good interactive mock, trade machine, trade proposal simulator on Cap Friendly. I want you guys to like go make a mock trade for any of the big three. Matthews, Tavares. Matthews, Tavares is an MC, so he's not moving that. Matthews, Nylander, and Marner. See if you can put together a trade that makes sense where the Leafs win. I am 99.9% sure you won't be able to. And that window is closing. There's still a long time because these guys are young, but they're not getting any younger. So taking away a year because your team got worse, it will get worse if you move one of them. That doesn't help the Leafs' goal of trying to win the cup. As simple as that. At some point, the Leafs are going to be um, back in the playoffs, and they're going to be up against a Nylander or a Marner, and they're going to cook you because they are capable of cooking you. If you bring back some veteran, maybe they work out, and more than likely they're going to be worse than a Marner or Nylander. Just look at Huberdeau. That is the perfect example. So you know what? I don't think you can move on from any of these guys. If you move Murray, you still have a lot of money next year, about $4 million to play with. If you bring back O'Reilly at $4.5 million, if you don't, then you have even more money to play with. And the year after that, you have to re-sign the Matthews and Nylander extensions will kick in, but then the cap's also going up. So, if Nylander takes an 8.5, if Matthews takes a 13 million, you're still pretty set. It's not hard to fill in a couple bottom 6 spots with $1 million contracts. Especially considering all the prospects that the Leafs have coming up that could take spots, Pontus Holmberg, Alex Steves, etc., etc. So, yeah. There isn't a cap problem. It's just a decision to make between keeping them and not keeping them. All right. So that is basically everything. But I do have one more message, and it's going to be a little bit more deep. Uh, not as much hockey related, but here we go. A lot of people expect the world to end when their hockey team loses. It's really not like that. Um, trust me, there are things that are a lot worse that can happen to a person. It's fine to be sad about it for a couple days, but it's important to just move on and focus on the next one because at the end of the day, sport is sport. Sport is a game. It's for fun. And I'm also a very sore loser. I hate losing. Um, when I play, you see me pissed off after a game after I lose. Um, but at the end of the day, it's about the experience and how it takes your mind off of life. It shouldn't be the driving factor and the biggest thing that affects your mood. So, yeah, that's just a little rant on how you really shouldn't be focusing on this that much. You'll be back. The Leafs will be back next season. Um, and if you're not willing to do all this over again, then you don't have to. I'm sure they don't mind. They got billions of other fans to worry about. But yeah, don't focus on it too much. Enjoy your summer. Get ready for free agency. Look out for whoever the new GM is, and maybe enjoy the rest of the playoffs if you're down for watching some probably Vegas, Florida hockey. Which, by the way, is pretty stupid. By the way, thanks a lot, Bettman. But yeah, so that's enough for this episode of Leafs Town. Let me know how you think about this. It's a little change, I think, but it helps split things up a bit, and you can come back to the podcast at different times and focus on different sections depending on what you're feeling. That's at least my take. It puts a bit more work, but at the same time, I enjoy doing it. So thank you everyone for listening to this episode of Leafs Town. We will see you next time.